In 2021, a young Malaysian man named Jacky Wong vanished while working on a remote cannabis farm in New South Wales. 16 months later, police uncovered his buried body, murdered over a debt inside a billion-dollar drug empire. What began as a promise of easy money turned into a trap run by organized crime syndicates from Southeast Asia, exploiting desperate migrants for profit. This is the story of how Australia's booming illegal cannabis trade turned one man's dream into a nightmare. The setup, how they lure young men into the trap. To really understand what happened to Jacky Wong, you first need to understand how the system itself operates. This isn't random crime, it's an organized, well-oiled network that thrives on desperation. Australia's illegal cannabis trade didn't explode overnight. Back in the early 2000s, it started as small, underground grow houses tucked away in quiet suburbs. But as demand surged and profits skyrocketed, it grew into a billion-dollar industry run by organized crime syndicates, mainly from Vietnam, China, Malaysia, and Thailand. By the time Jacky arrived, that machine was already in full swing. The way these groups recruit is disturbingly simple. They look for young men, usually from poor areas in Southeast Asia, and offer them what sounds like a life-changing deal. Come to Australia, they say. Work on farms, earn up to 10 grand a month. No experience needed, no risk, no questions. For someone trying to support family back home, that kind of offer sounds impossible to refuse. But that's the trap. These young men arrive thinking they're just farm workers. In reality, they're entering a criminal network that shields its top layers behind disposable labor. The kingpins never handle the drugs. The middlemen never step foot in a grow house. It's the lowest men in the chain, the ones trimming plants and living on isolated farms, who face the full weight of the law when things fall apart. When the cops move in, they're the ones caught, jailed, and deported. Meanwhile, the operation rolls on, untouched. Jacky was one of them. He came to Australia in 2016 on a holiday visa, likely believing he was taking a chance at a better life. Instead, he ended up working deep inside one of New South Wales' most organized cannabis networks. For a few years, everything ran quietly. Different locations, same routine, same pay. But in late 2020, something went terribly wrong. The fatal miscalculation, when the money stopped flowing. According to police investigations and court documents, Jacky's relationship with the syndicate took a dark turn. It didn't just work for them anymore, he owed them money. No one knows exactly how much or why, but in that world, debt isn't just a number, it's a threat. And debts have to be settled. Between Christmas Day 2020 and January 8, 2021, Jacky was stationed on a remote property near Kilongbuta, about 3 hours west of Sydney. Police later discovered between 500 and 1,000 cannabis plants growing there. His job was what they call a crop sitter. He lived on site, keeping watch over the plants, making sure no one stole from the operation and that everything ran smoothly. Then, something happened. Somewhere in that 2-week window, Jacky was killed. Detectives would later describe his death as brutal and gruesome, though they've never shared the full details publicly. What they did reveal was enough to paint a chilling picture. Jacky had been murdered and buried right there on the same property he was guarding. For the syndicate, it was just business. But for Jacky, it was the end of a dream that began with hope and ended in betrayal and blood. The disappearance. Months of questions. For months, Jacky Wong was simply gone. No calls, no messages, no trace. His family back in Malaysia grew increasingly desperate when his last contact came on December 28, 2020. They reached out to authorities, but in the shadowy world of organized crime, missing people don't always make the news right away. Weeks passed and months, and eventually, more than a year slipped by without answers. It wasn't until mid-2021 that the investigation took a serious turn. NSW police had just launched Strikeforce Highway, a massive task force built to dismantle large-scale cannabis operations across New South Wales. This wasn't about catching one grower here or there. It was about taking down the system itself, the suppliers, the money trail, and the people running it all from behind the curtain. As detectives followed the leads, a grim picture started to form. Jacky hadn't just disappeared, he'd likely been murdered. And the motive, investigators believed, came from within the very network he worked for. This revelation said a lot about how these syndicates really function. There's no loyalty in this business, just money, control, and fear. If someone becomes a problem, they're removed. No questions, no hesitation. The search and discovery. Uncovering the truth. In late March 2022, nearly 16 18 months after Jacky vanished, Enesadazir police returned to the remote Kilongbuta property. This time, they weren't just checking on another illegal grow site. They were looking for a body. On April 3, 2022, their search ended in the worst possible way. Human remains were discovered on the property. Forensic testing confirmed what everyone feared. It was Jacky Wong. He had been buried on the same land he once guarded for his employers. Malaysian authorities joined the case soon after, working with Australian police to piece together how Jacky's life had ended. What they found was cold, calculated violence. Jacky wasn't a random victim or caught in a crossfire. He was deliberately targeted. He had owed money to the syndicate, and when he couldn't pay, the decision was made. In their world, that meant one thing: he had to die. Police also uncovered what Jacky had been protecting: a professional, large-scale cannabis farm. It wasn't a backyard setup. It was an industrial operation, capable of producing hundreds of kilograms of product worth millions on the street. Investigators estimated between 500 and 1,000 plants were growing on the property when he was killed. The arrests following the trail. By the time police found Jacky's remains, the net had already started to close around his killers. 3 men, aged 33, 28, and 22, were arrested and charged with murder, along with a series of drug-related offenses. The investigation exposed just how extensive the operation really was. This wasn't a handful of people running one site. It was a well-organized network spread across Sydney and regional areas. Police raided multiple properties, seizing cash, electronics, and documents that tied everything together. A map of a drug empire hidden in plain sight. Raids in Auburn and Marsfield turned up more evidence: communication records, financial transactions, and tools used to manage large cannabis crops. But the most disturbing discovery came soon after. One of the men charged, Jacky Wong, wasn't just accused of being involved in Jacky's murder. He was also charged with a separate crime: trying to extort $50,000 from Jacky's grieving mother. He allegedly promised her information about her son's fate, preying on her desperation for answers. Just imagine that. Her son had already been murdered over money, and someone involved in that same circle tried to take even more from her, all while pretending to help. It was the final insult in a story that revealed the true nature of Australia's underground cannabis trade, built on lies, greed, and the lives of those who never stood a chance. Court drama, guilty pleas, and convictions. After years of investigation and delays, the case finally made its way through the courts. It had been more than 2 years since Jacky Wong's body was found, and what followed wasn't some long, dramatic courtroom showdown. It was quieter, colder, and in many ways, more chilling. On August 28, 2024, one of the main suspects, Yilin Liu, stood before the judge and pleaded guilty to murder. A few days later, on September 6, 2024, he was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. There was no drawn-out trial, no shocking twist, just a man admitting to his role in another man's death, a death sparked by a debt inside a billion-dollar drug operation. Then came Jacky Wong, the same man accused of trying to extort Jacky's grieving mother. He didn't face a murder charge, but he pleaded guilty to being an accessory after the fact, meaning he helped hide or cover up what happened after Jacky was killed. He was convicted the same day as Liu, but that wasn't all. Wang also faced a string of other charges: dishonestly obtaining a financial advantage through deception, the $50,000 extortion plot against Jacky's mother, dealing with proceeds of crime, and participating in the cultivation of commercial quantities of cannabis. Each charge came with serious weight. The accessory, after the fact alone, carried a potential 25-year prison sentence, while the financial deception and proceeds of crime charges added even more years on top. What the court revealed was the brutal logic behind this underworld. This wasn't about rage or emotion. It was about money, control, and fear. Jacky wasn't killed by mistake. He was killed because, in their eyes, he had become a liability. And in an operation built on profit and silence, liabilities don't get warnings. They get erased. Understanding the bigger picture, the cannabis empire. Jacky's murder wasn't an isolated story. It was part of a much larger problem that's quietly taken root across Australia. Industrial-scale cannabis farms run by organized crime. Just look at the numbers. In 2020 alone, police in New South Wales seized cannabis worth more than $40 million in a single statewide operation. Around the same time, another bust near Coonabarabran uncovered what was then the largest cannabis crop in Australian history, a staggering $70 million worth of plants spread across a single isolated property. These weren't amateurs growing a few plants in a shed. These were fully organized, corporate-style farms. The setups were astonishing. Hydroponic systems, industrial-sized greenhouses stretching nearly 60 meters long, high-powered electrical systems, pumps, solar panels, and generators, all built to keep the farms running out in remote regions where police rarely patrol. Some were so sophisticated that they looked more like commercial agriculture than illegal drug production. And the profits? They're staggering. One average grow house can generate around $185,000 in just 3 months. Multiply that by dozens or even hundreds of properties, and you've got a criminal business worth hundreds of millions every year. But behind the machinery and money lies a brutal truth. The people keeping these farms running aren't masterminds, they're disposable workers. Men like Jacky, who come chasing opportunity and end up trapped inside a system that treats them as expendable. When they become a risk, whether it's debt, disobedience, or suspicion, they're removed. That's what happened to Jacky Wong. He wasn't killed because he fought back. He was killed because, to the people running this empire, he'd stopped being useful. And in their world, that's all it takes. The systemic exploitation, a pattern of vulnerability. What makes Jacky Wong's story so devastating isn't just what happened to him, it's that it keeps happening. His case was never a one-off tragedy. It's part of a larger, ongoing cycle built on exploitation, fear, and false promises. Police across Australia have seen the same pattern over and over. Young men, mostly from Southeast Asia, arriving with legitimate student, tourist, or work visas, hoping to earn good money and support their families back home. They're promised easy farm work, big paydays, and a simple life in Australia. But what they find instead is a trap. These men are pulled into criminal networks disguised as labor jobs. Their passports are often taken, their freedom is restricted, and their safety means nothing to the people in charge. They work long hours in isolated rural properties, growing cannabis worth millions, while being paid next to nothing, or nothing at all. During the COVID-19 pandemic, recruitment exploded. As lockdowns crushed the job market, especially for foreign workers, these offers became harder to resist. Police noticed a sharp spike in young men from countries like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Thailand being funneled into cannabis farms. The promise of $3,000 to $2,500 a month sounded like a lifeline, but it was a lie. The system behind their exploitation is carefully designed. Recruits arrive believing they'll earn big money, only to find out they owe thousands for food, rent, or travel expenses. Their wages are deducted until there's nothing left. Their movements are monitored, their phones are sometimes confiscated, and they're told that going to the police will lead to deportation. In the end, they're trapped, isolated, scared, and controlled. Some magistrates have even described these setups as a form of modern-day slavery, and when someone tries to walk away or refuses an order, consequences can be brutal. Jacky Wong was one of many who discovered too late that in this world, loyalty means nothing and fear keeps everything running. The law enforcement response. A war without end police haven't ignored the crisis. Over the years, massive task forces have been formed to fight back. Strike Force Harthouse, Strike Force Zambezi, Strike Force Highway, and several others. These units are made up of hundreds of officers from across different regions, all focused on finding and dismantling illegal cannabis operations, and on paper, their results are staggering. In 2020 alone, more than 13,000 cannabis plants were seized in a single operation. Millions in cash were recovered, entire properties were shut down, and dozens of people were arrested and convicted. Every few months, police announce another major bust, another farm raided, another network exposed. But the reality is far more frustrating. For every grow house taken down, more spring up somewhere else. It's like fighting smoke. You can hit it, but you can't hold it. Police commanders have admitted publicly that they're not sure whether they're actually reducing the problem or just chipping away at the edges while the core of the network continues to grow. The reason is simple: money. The profit margins are too high and the risks are too low. A single successful harvest can fund dozens of new sites. Even if police raid a property and arrest a few workers, the kingpins don't blink. They've already made enough to rebuild. It's an endless cycle, a war where one side fights for justice and the other fights for millions. And somewhere caught between those two sides are people like Jacky Wong, young, hopeful, and unaware that they're walking straight into a world that will use them, exploit them, and, if necessary, make them disappear. The cost of ambition. Lessons unlearned. Jacky Wong's story is more than a headline. It's a harsh reminder of what happens when ambition meets the wrong kind of opportunity. He wasn't some hardened criminal or gang leader. He was a young Malaysian man chasing a better life in Australia, hoping to send money back home. But the path he chose led him into a world he didn't truly understand. A world run by violence, greed, and silence. For years, Jacky managed to survive inside Australia's underground cannabis trade. He knew how to stay quiet, how to follow orders, how to keep his head down. But in the end, that wasn't enough. When he found himself in debt to people who don't forgive, there was no way out. The same system that gave him a chance to earn money became the one that destroyed him. What's shocking is how ordinary his story is within Australia's criminal underworld. Young men, migrants, laborers, students are being pulled into these operations every day. And when money goes missing or someone makes a mistake, the punishment is swift and brutal. It's a cycle that keeps repeating. Bodies found in remote fields, police investigations, arrests, yet nothing really changes. Jacky wasn't especially unlucky. He was just caught in a system that doesn't care who you are, only what you're worth. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong people, that's all it takes. And for thousands like him, that combination proves fatal every single year. The unspoken question, why keep going? The hardest part about cases like Jacky's is that we never really get the full story. Why him? What exactly went wrong? Did an argument get out of hand, or did someone decide he was no longer useful? The official reports don't say much. Detective Superintendent Watson called it particularly gruesome, but didn't elaborate. The truth remains locked away, and that silence is its own kind of cruelty. What we do know is this: these criminal networks survive because they prey on desperation. They need a steady stream of young men willing to take risks, to work long hours in isolation, often with no idea who they're actually working for. Without that workforce, the billion-dollar cannabis trade collapses. With it, the violence continues, quiet, organized, and constant. Conclusion: a system that demands answers. Jacky Wong's death wasn't just one man's tragedy. It was a failure on every level. A failure of the criminal network that treated him as disposable. A failure of the system that allowed such operations to thrive. And a failure of society to protect young migrants who fall into these traps, believing they found a shortcut to success. His story should be a warning that easy money often comes with a price far higher than anyone expects. It should push lawmakers and investigators to look deeper into how organized crime recruits and exploits vulnerable workers. And it should remind all of us that behind every major drug bust or police press conference, there are real people, people like Jacky, whose hopes were twisted into tragedy. Today, the illegal cannabis trade in Australia is only growing stronger. Bigger profits, more ruthless players, and more young men lured in by the same false promises. Jacky's story is just one of many, buried, forgotten, but not unique. His remains were found on a lonely farm in rural New South Wales, left to decay in silence. But his story shouldn't fade away. It deserves to be told as a symbol of how ambition, desperation, and exploitation collide inside Australia's most dangerous and profitable criminal world.